Hi, welcome to week 2, our second leg of our learning journey on the art of facilitation. This is Catherine, and it was great to read and comment and see what you're thinking about regarding this learning journey. Last time, you'll recall, we were looking at definitions and orientations to facilitation, going from a fairly classic, traditional offering by Roger Schwartz, moving through to ideas and principles from the art of hosting and the art of convening. And today, what we're going to look at are values, beliefs, and assumptions, and how those are taken together to formulate a facilitator's stance. So when we look at these ideas, what are the values, the beliefs, and assumptions that we hold that ground our work, and then from that formulate our stance, what it is that we take when we're designing an event and working with people? Again, some questions for you to consider. What are your assumptions about adult learners? Because certainly when we're convening groups, we can presuppose that people are there, yes, to share their ideas, but that there's an element of learning that's occurring. And what do you already know about adult learning principles? How now are you understanding the role of facilitation? Even our first week's learning videos and some of the different activities that you were involved in, formulating some of your own thinking, reading some of what your traveling companions are talking about, what are you now understanding facilitation to be? And are you getting glimpses as to what you personally bring to this work? More specifically, some reflection and application questions, again, to get you ready for your post for our online conversation. Be thinking about, how has this material in this week's core learning video, how is it illuminating your own values and beliefs and assumptions? You're going to be invited to describe your personal facilitation stance, and I'll give you a bit of mine just as a bit of an illustration. And what do you anticipate as you apply this material into your own practice? This time I'm working with the thought leaders Joellen Killian and her partner Surname Simmons from a very, very good article, The Zen of Facilitation. Now there's a link on this slide, but I've also included this in haiku, and I'm asking that you read this article. It's probably the most succinct overview on this shift that we're seeing from classic staff development, training, teaching, into a more hosting way of working with people. And what they offer is that with experience and recognizing how things are becoming more complex, that the distinctions between teaching, training, and process facilitation are becoming more apparent. Quoting from their article, it's not what we do or even how we do it that separates a trainer from a facilitator. Rather, it's the belief system that drives our actions, and that's what makes the difference. Going on and citing a person by the name of Hyder, what they're reminding us is that we are facilitating another person's process. It's not our process. So do not intrude, do not control, do not force your own needs and insights into the foreground. If you do not trust a person's process, that person will not trust you. So that may be an idea that's new for you, that maybe is going to provoke or evoke some response that I invite you to think about and include in your online conversation. Going on, what they're offering is that the beliefs about facilitation, people, and even ourselves in the role of group facilitators and conversation hosts, it powerfully influences and affects how we design, how we behave, and how we make sense of the actual facilitation experience. They propose 3 beliefs that align with others that you're going to see what the alignment is as we go through this material in this week's learning journey. Number 1, that facilitators trust the group's ability to find its own direction and resolution. Number 2, a sense of community creates a forum for group work. And number 3, that the facilitator has no preconceived notions. So in the subsequent slides, we're going to be fleshing this out a bit, but already you're going to see how some of what was introduced in our first learning video in week 1 about the whole notion about equity, participation, trust, kindness, respect, this is starting to come through even more so. So, that first belief that facilitators trust the group's ability to find its own direction and resolution. With this belief as your guide, you're going to take certain actions. For example, you're going to ask questions and listen, not just in the actual facilitation, but before, when you're planning and designing the event. These actions replace giving answers, assuming the group's need, or providing solutions. So if you think back to how we ended our learning video a week ago with that chart, and I do apologize, I know it wasn't coming through clearly in the video, but when you had an opportunity to look at it again, you're seeing that we moved from giving answers to asking questions. We were moving from one right answer to many answers. A second action or belief that you're going to hold is that you're going to recognize when it's time, and that all issues can be resolved if the time and the conditions are right. So what Killian and Simmons go on to ask us to consider is that when the facilitator models the behaviors of respectful listening, maintaining personal safety, honoring various perspectives, sharing, trusting, risk-taking, disclosing, when we bring that into our practice, then group members mirror these behaviors. So belief number 2 from the Zen of facilitation, a sense of community creates the forum for group work. And so again, how is it that we build community? What are some of the practices and the behaviors that we want to make sure that are in place? And they are citing from Scott Peck in his book, In a Different Drum, by quoting, "The community is a group of people who have learned to communicate honestly with each other, whose relationships go deeper than their masks of composure, and who have developed some significant commitment to rejoice together, to delight in each other, and to make others' conditions as our own. Once a group has achieved community, the single most common thing members express is, 'I feel safe here.'" This reminds me of another thought leader, Peter Senge. Some of you might be familiar with his work, classic, The Five Disciplines, the fifth discipline. And he talks about team learning, what it means when a group of people get together to really learn. And he said it's not for the faint of heart, that in fact some of that is going to be the most challenging work that we do, when we learn to surface our assumptions, when we learn to inquire into each other's assumptions and advocate for our assumptions, when we learn to sit in the uncertainty and the place of not knowing, that some of that is what gives us that sense of community. Aligned with this belief and some of what Scott Peck is offering, that as facilitators, again, we're going to model those attitudes and behaviors that support community. We're going to be transparent. We're going to reveal our thinking in the moment. And we're going to foster independence among group members as well as interdependence by saying, "I'm really not quite sure where we need to go right now. Let's hear from you." And together we're going to know what our next steps need to be. We're going to stay in the here and now, and we're going to trust our intuition by developing, as uncomfortable or exhilarating as it might be, that seat of the pants, fluid, responsive, in the moment way of working. Belief number 3, coming again from the Zen of facilitation, the facilitator has no preconceived notions. We need to let go about how it's supposed to be and allow the group to shape its future. And to do this, we need to be flexible, egoless, and confident in the power of the group to inform us. So to do this, We're going to go slowly to go fast. We want to take the time to build relationships, to establish a common knowledge base, to develop awareness of other viewpoints, and to understand one another. While you can force change, you also have the option to let it happen naturally. And while the former is faster, the likelihood is that's going to increase resistance, and in the long run, make it longer to get to where we need to go. So by going slowly to go fast, it tends to receive greater acceptance. We're going to use the group's energy, particularly its resistance or negative energy, which if we attend to and we don't avoid, like a martial artist who practices Aikido, it's a valuable force and source for moving a group forward. And rule of thumb, if we're not sure what to do, we do nothing. We have to get comfortable with not knowing, with not doing, with not efforting quite so much, and with trusting the group will determine its next step, or that more information will emerge to make that next action apparent. This is a component of what we are now calling holding space, something that as you went into the Art of Hosting website last time, you would have heard a little bit more about. So from the World Cafe community, again, related to that whole notion of the art of hosting, they have some attitudes and some beliefs about how it is that we work with people, that we know that people have within the experience, wisdom, and creativity to confront even the most difficult challenges. And that when given the appropriate context, focus, and protocols, something that we as facilitators or conversation hosts offer, that it's possible to access and use this deeper knowledge to resolve our challenges. And when we use conversation assisted by protocols, that becomes a core process to cultivate that collective wisdom so that we can address our challenges and create value. A little bit here about this notion of the value of conversation as a core strategy in business. So rather than reducing that to what happens at the cooler or coffee break, we're really situating conversation as being pivotal and critical for helping us resolve the issues that all of us are dealing with in our organizations, in our communities, in our families. And so this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in week 1, about the artistry, being able to recognize the group as the art form of the future and the importance of being able to cultivate this artistry. Going back to that classic orientation that Schwartz offered, he's giving us some core values as far as valid information, free and informed choice, and the internal commitment to choice. From the Art of Hosting, recognizing that there's a pattern in this way of working that's generative and non-possessive, that values different practices as gateways to connecting. It's about connecting and uniting us. It's welcoming and celebrating diversity. It's a way of inviting life in. It trusts in the organic process so that we're able to see what's emerging and respond to the need of the moment. And it's holding the ability to dance with multiple practices and methods and embrace the deeper pattern of each. We'll talk a little bit more in our 5th learning journey when we're looking more at the practices and the protocols of facilitation. From open space technology, 4 nice principles: whoever comes are the right people, whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, when it starts, and when it's over, it's over. So now you're maybe going to want to go through these slides again, but this is in preparation to have you go back to haiku and to visit some of the additional stops along the way in terms of values, beliefs, and assumptions and stance. You're going to have an opportunity to formulate your own facilitator stance, and you're going to have once again a chance to write in post and to remember that we conclude this leg of our journey